So in this module, we're going to figure out and define, identify who an A player is. You can create a grid like this with lives the core values at the top, does not live the core values, and then exceeds expectations, does not exceed expectations. We're going to be using this grid, and there are people that advocate for, I've heard that you can rate your current team members on a 1 to 10 scale for each of these criteria and then plot them, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So an A player is someone who lives the core values and exceeds the expectations. Now you notice we don't say meets expectations, because if we have an expectation of 200 widgets or 200 phone calls or 200 patient visits or whatever it is in a month, very few people will ever hit the 200 exactly. It'll be 205 or 201 or 223 or 186 or what have you. They may occasionally hit the line, but over time they're going to be above or below that line. So that's why we don't put meet expectations, we're looking at exceeds expectations. So they're going to be above the line on whatever their metrics, their tasks, their project delivery, their expectations are, and they're going to live, at least in the business, their behaviors in accordance with the core values that we've articulated. A B player would be someone who lives the core values, demonstrates the behaviors, but does not meet the expectations. This is expected in a new hire type scenario where someone's not up to speed yet. You have a new salesperson or a new therapist or a new dentist working where they don't have a full patient load, or they haven't closed enough sales or deals, so they're below the line. And this is expected while they learn, but you've got a timeline, or should have a timeline in mind or in place to determine when they should go above that line. But we are looking for the people who fit and live the core values here, so this means that their behaviors are consistent with those values that you've articulated. Now we're going to move into the next one. These are the C players. These are the people that do not live the core values. So an example might be that if communication, listen to understand, ensure clarity, engage with candor is one of your core values, this is a person who holds back, doesn't listen, is in opposition to the core values. So, and then they also do not meet the job expectations. And we'll get to what to do with these people in just a few minutes. But they're not exceeding expectations, they're not meeting the expectations, they're falling short, and they do not live the core values of the organization. Now, what do you do with the next quadrant? The B players. And we're going to kind of put these in quotes, whether they're B players or not. This is the person that tends to, they produce their numbers, they do their tasks, they do their job, but they don't align with the values of the company. There's a tension, you can feel it, you see in their behaviors, it's not what the rest of the team expects. So again, we'll get to what we do with these people in just a few minutes, but what I want you to do first is think about plotting your current team. So whether you've got 5 employees or 20 or 100, you can start, and if you've got a larger organization, you can do this by department and what have you, but you're going to plot the different people on your team. And the important thing here to remember, to recognize, is that this is an analog scale. So in other words, everybody doesn't end up right here in the middle of the A. Someone may be up here, someone may be down here, someone may be up here. It really depends upon the, it's a qualitative assessment. It's also, when you're looking at the exceeds or does not meet expectations, does not exceed expectations, that's a numeric target in most cases, or in many cases anyway. So you can plot them up and down on this graph. Then you can also plot them left to right, depending on how bad they are over here, aligning with the core values, or how wonderful and exciting they are over here. So go ahead and plot your team. We're going to use an example here next. We've taken just 6 team members and put them on the graph. We've got a couple A players. As you can see, this person's a high performer and really exemplifies the core values. This person is exceeding expectations and lives the core values, but maybe not to the same extent that this person does. If we go down here, we've got the Bs. This person's exemplary in the core values, but not delivering on all the items in the job yet. Similarly, you can see lives the core values adequately, does not exceed expectations yet. This person's the one that's hitting their numbers, but not consistent with the core values that we've articulated. And this person is doing neither one. So what do you do with a A player? Well, you take care of them. Okay? You coach, you mentor, you foster, you find out what they need, you make sure that they've got an ongoing communication plan with you, that everything's that you basically foster and take care of them. You also then include them in different activities to keep them engaged and motivated in the organization. So what do you do with the B player? Well, you coach and teach and you foster them, and you're trying to move them from here up here. You're not necessarily trying to change where they are in the value system. They're performing okay here, but we want to make sure that their performance on their deliverables, their measurables, their KPIs, their metrics, that those are happening and that they get better and better at that. This is really a case of skill acquisition. These are things that can be taught. Job role, and if you end up with someone who just can't do the job as defined, but they're still a fit on the core values, perhaps there's another position, another place in the organization where they could excel and move into the A player role. So what do you do with the C player? This person, it's pretty obvious, if they're not performing and they're not living the core values, you free up their future. You move them out. Hopefully they can find another team or another position somewhere where they can be successful. There are ways to do this with sensitivity, explanation, setting clear accountabilities. They know they're not performing. They know they're not a fit in the company, but ultimately you want to free up their future. And that brings us to what to do with this kind of quote-unquote B player questionable. This ends up being an area of a good deal of debate because they're delivering, and this the classic argument is, well, I have a salesperson who's exceeding their expectations, who's bringing in a lot of money, generating revenue. What do you think they're doing to the culture, and what should you do with them? And there are people that will advocate coaching and teaching and giving them an opportunity to move right to left. If you do that, if you decide to tell them about the behaviors that they're not meeting, if you're the behaviors that you want, to confront them and discuss it with them, just make sure you have a timeline in which that needs to be delivered, in which they need to show those changes. And in most cases, what's going to happen is you're also going to end up freeing up their future. They might be a high performer in the position, but not a great fit for your team. And what's interesting is, after you've exited this person, the relief, the palpable change in the atmosphere, the culture, is really extraordinary. So if you're still debating or thinking, well, maybe I won't do that, or I'm not sure, yeah, you can ask yourself a couple questions. Number one, if I keep this person around and they are not living the core values, what's that saying to my A players over here and the B players that I'm trying to move up the chain? The other question to ask is, would I hire them? And would I hire them again? And if the answer to that is no, then you've got a pretty clear answer as to what your next steps ought to be. Now, you've got an idea, you've exited these people, you've cleaned it up, or you've maybe perhaps moved someone right to left, which it tends to be a challenge. But once you've got a team of A and B players, people living the core values, and you can spend time, and by the way, make sure to spend time with these people. They tend to get neglected as we focus on these folks and try to coach them and move them up. Engage them, encourage them, help them, maybe include them in the coaching and the teaching process for these B players to keep them engaged, show that they're valued, recognize them for what they do, and make sure you take care of the folks in this quadrant. So thank you for listening to this one. You can get more information at SturdyMcKee.com, and I hope you enjoy the next lessons in the recruiting and hiring process.